Good morning, brothers, sisters, and basement exiles. Let's talk about what it takes to be a pastor, shall we? According to 1 Timothy chapter 3, the Apostle Paul lays out some very simple, very clear qualifications for a bishop. A fancy Bible word for pastor. These aren't suggestions. These aren't choose-your-own-adventure guidelines. This isn't spiritual improv night. These are the job requirements, like minimum qualifications. If you don't meet them, you don't get the gig. If a man desires the office of a bishop, he desires a good work. Nice start. Pastoring, noble job, tough gig. You gotta feed the flock, guide the church, and maybe not publicly call for arson. You know, basic stuff. A bishop then must be blameless.
Oh boy. Steven Anderson, blameless like a wrecking ball in a crystal store. Blameless like a toddler with chocolate smeared across his face saying it wasn't me. This is the guy whose own kids are publicly testifying that he beats his wife, whips his children with electrical cords, and treats his family like a boot camp for the emotionally unavailable. Blameless, huh? Captain Electrical Cord says hi.
The husband of one wife. Okay, sure, he's got one wife, but the way he treats her, more like hostage in a fundamentalist Airbnb. She's upstairs in the master bedroom running the family finances, sleeping alone, while the self-proclaimed man of the house is down in the basement, sleeping like a grounded dog with a Bible and a bowl of rage. This isn't marriage. It's Cold War-era cohabitation with hymnals. Vigilant, sober, of good behavior. Let's take those three like a bad buffet. Vigilant? Yeah, if you mean paranoid, he kicks out anyone who disagrees with him faster than a Jehovah's Witness at an atheist barbecue. Sober? He says he doesn't drink, but talks about alcohol like he's one sip away from turning his pulpit into a keg stand. Who mentions drinking games every week unless they're either playing them or deeply repressing the urge. Good behavior. We talking Jesus in the temple, or pastor breaks chairs in the dining room because someone used the wrong tone when saying grace? Because I've seen cats on catnip with better impulse control, given to hospitality. Hospitality. Steven's the kind of guy who invites people over and they leave with emotional PTSD and a sudden desire to become Presbyterian. He doesn't do hospitality. He does hostility with snacks. Apt to teach. Sure, if the subject is gaslighting, rage management, poorly, and biblical cherry picking for beginners. This man will scream, "If you think I hit my wife, get out of my church, you return!" And then the next week go, "Today's sermon is on spousal discipline. Now, I'm not saying I hit her, but if I did, it would be biblical." Excuse me, what? That's not teaching. That's spiritual damage control with a PowerPoint. Not given to wine. Sure, he's not sipping Chardonnay on Sunday. But again, the man's obsessed with alcohol. It's like if someone said, "I don't like clowns," but then kept showing you their Pennywise fan fiction. You're not fooling anyone, buddy. No striker. I mean, he literally beats people. He's known for beating people. There's an underground nickname, Captain Electrical Cord, like a supervillain whose powers include poorly suppressed rage and quoting Leviticus out of context. No striker, more like no breaks. Not greedy of filthy lucre, but patient. Greedy? The man's entire church empire is a rage-based fundraising scheme. The tithing plate isn't passed around, it's thrown like a frisbee of guilt. Patient? This man once screamed at his child during dinner instead of telling them to go to their room. That's not patience, that's parenting with a side of trauma. Not a brawler. That's literally his whole identity. He picks fights like it's a commandment. And when Solomon Anderson showed up in crop tops, heels, and choker necklaces, Stephen didn't respond with "Let me shepherd my son." Nope, he launched a smear campaign against everyone who ever knew him, just to distract from the twink in his bloodline. You thought he was going to talk about love and redemption? Nah, we got Cocaine Diaper, a love story, because nothing says God is love like defending a guy who cheated with 80 women and might have done meth in the baptistry. One that ruleth well his own house. Let's talk about this house. One son wants Stephen in prison. Two sons are sending gay porn to critics out of spite. One daughter slept in a ditch rather than come home. All the adult children now appearing on Satanist drag queen podcasts. That's not a house in order. That's the Maury Show, Apocalypse Edition. Having his children in subjection with all gravity. His kids aren't in subjection. They're in open revolt. They're planning mines under his ministry with YouTube confessions and Twitter threads longer than Leviticus. And gravity? The only gravity here is how hard they're trying to drag his reputation straight into the molten core of the internet. Not a novice. Oh, please, Stephen wasn't ordained. He claimed ordination from a guy who literally said, "Nah, bro, I just put my hand on his shoulder and said good luck." He then forged his own certificate like a homeschooled Dwight Schrute with a Bible and a printer. That's not ordination, that's clerical fan fiction. Moreover, he must have a good report of them, which are without. This man's banned from more countries than a suitcase full of expired meat. Even other churches don't want to be associated with him. If you mention Faithful Word Baptist in a church in another state, they excommunicate you on the spot. He's not hated because of the gospel. He's hated because he's a spiritual dumpster with a YouTube channel. Stephen Anderson is the man who looked at 1 Timothy 3 and said, "Let me fail every single verse on purpose." He's not a pastor. He's a case study in spiritual malpractice, a walking red flag in a suit, the Florida man of the fundamentalist world. Now, if you'll excuse me, I gotta go update Paul's letter. Dear Timothy, if you meet a guy named Stephen L. Anderson, just run. Good rest of the morning, America.